You're now listening to the Adiel Gorel Show. Each episode, I'll bring you the latest news from my discussions with top health and wellness experts so that you can bring yourself into better health. Today, on the Adiel Gorel Show, it's about interacting with another person. It's a conversation, exchange of energy. Hi, everybody. It's such a joy to be here with you again as part of the Adiel Gorel Show. Chad, it's always so great to see you. Nice to see you.
Great to see you as well, Adiel. Today, I'm really excited for our conversation because I think it's so important in our society. So kick it off. Where are we at?
Well, I was absolutely delighted with the interview with Kim Anami. Kim Anami talks about sexuality, sexual energy. And right away, when we live in the Western world, it's easy to feel like, sex, dirty, what are you talking about? But sexuality really is one of the energies we have circulating through us. And it's important, it's natural. And so she was a treasure trove of information, which I hope will be of benefit to our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to kind of frame this after watching the interview that you did with her, but frame it for our viewers. I mean, if we put aside sort of a lot of the cultural beliefs and the cultural norms that we've learned around sexuality, just put those aside for a second and just I'd ask our viewers and listeners to just think for a second. I mean, sexual energy is the most powerful, potent energy that we have. I mean, you can just assess it for yourself. You can assess it like the attraction to be with someone, the attraction to be in relationship or not relationship. We're not saying whether you're married or not married is a problem, but just the compulsion, the desire that we all have as human beings to be sexually connected to each other is a very powerful energy. And I think that what your interview with Kim helped to do was to reframe it or shift it away from this sort of pop culture, consumerist, commodified approach to sex to, no, this is a natural part of what it means to be human. It's important to our wellness. It's important to our health. It's important to our psychology, our emotional and mental health. And I just thought it was a great interview. So, I mean, let's go through some of what she came up with you.
She said some beautiful things. She said, our sexual power is our life force energy. And, we even talked about, she said, some people are talked about and people say, oh, he or she is very charismatic. Well, being charismatic is really sexual energy manifesting. It's not about sex, it's sexual energy that makes some people charismatic and some people less so. So she says our sexual power is our life force energy. When people are, out of touch with this power, they're operating at a deficiency. So I think part of passion, of creativity, of anything, even the ability to make money, has to also do, in addition to many other things, with our sexual energy. Not about sex, sexual energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is an important distinction that, at least in Western culture, we get confused sometimes. We think that if we're talking about sexual energy, we're talking about sex, the actual act of having sex. Of course, sexual energy can lead to the act of having sex. But Adiel, as you and Kim Anami talked about in the interview, it doesn't always have to lead to what you would traditionally think of as sex. You can exchange sexual energy, like you mentioned, just through holding hands.
Right. I mean, we are going to be talking here because we have a short time about the traditional male, female, yin yang, man, woman. But of course, there are variations. You can have two men that have those feelings, or two women, or many other combinations. But we'll talk about man and woman. So yeah, absolutely. To me, or we talked about it, I said to her, is holding hands already sex? And yes, it is. Because again, I'm talking about men and women. When a man and woman hold hands, there's already a special feeling that goes through. Everybody knows it. Everybody can feel it. There's a certain joy holding hands. So, it's not that you're having sex, but it's sexual energy. Speaking in a certain way could be sexual energy. Some of the sexual masters said they could make love to their partners from across the room. It's the energy. Again, going back to the Chinese traditional medicine, they talk about meridians, they talk about many points that we have in acupuncture, and Western medicine is starting to warm up to all of those concepts as well. Sexual energy is very, very powerful. If you talk about the chakras, they usually talk about it from the second chakra. They talk about it going up to what they call, the power chakra. Everybody knows, every person viewing this knows sexual energy is powerful in your own life, no matter what it means to you, the viewer, there's power there. So she's talking about being able to harness and control the power and consciously move your sexual energy, not necessarily with physical touch or not. She said that, it's really part of wellness too. If people repress sexual energy, it's still there.
Yeah.
It starts to, things start to stagnate. It's not healthy. So it's good to know how to use it. She was talking about the Western male and how the Western male typically, and now I am talking about sexual stuff, ejaculates too frequently. And she talks about men who retain their sexual vitality don't ejaculate as frequently. So, if you think about it from the standpoint of just stupid logic like this, when the body of the male is getting ready to make sperm, the body doesn't know if the male is going to release that sperm in the context of who knows what, masturbation. It doesn't know. The body says, we are making sperm to make a baby. And it seems like nature or God or whatever it is that we live in wants to optimize and so the body of the male wants to make the best baby possible. So it takes the best of the person's body. Again, I'm speaking in a primitive way. This is not scientific at all. Just a concept, taking the best from the glands, and putting it into the sperm to make a great baby. And then the male ejaculates it out. Now the body goes back to work to make more sperm. Again, depleting some of the organ, depleting to make the best sperm. You repeat it too many times, and it's going to start depleting the man's energy in general. There are many jokes and stories and movies about the man who had sex too much and he starts looking old and frail. There's something to that. It comes from something. So,
yeah, there's a great, just to interject, there's a great, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Ali with Will Smith.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So it's an old one. It's about 20 years old. But Will Smith, when he was being
interviewed, yet I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I know. But no, Will in interviews actually, when he was training, so he had to train like Ali. They would put him in pools. He would try to run with water resistance on his pool. But one of the things that he said was that, and this is what they did with Ali, that when he was training, he was not allowed to ejaculate. He was not allowed. And so I don't know if he had sex or not, because Kim talks about how you can have sex and not ejaculate. And we can leave that conversation for a second here. But what Will said was by not ejaculating while he was training for this part, his energy, his almost like testosterone levels or whatever was just off the charts. Like he was actually more aggressive. He said he found himself getting more aggressive. Now, maybe it's because he wasn't trained in some of the things like Kim's talking about, but that was what they wanted. They wanted that vigor. They wanted that energy. They wanted to keep that contained for his training.
Some people would say he was just horny, which is also a good, horny means, the energy, but it's not the subject of male ejaculation is not new to sports teams.
No.
There are sports teams, Olympic athletes who make it a point not to ejaculate the day before the game or the week, whatever it is. Because, every person on earth, I think, can tell that something shifts when the male ejaculates. Something happens. I think the male nature kind of says, you did your job. You let the sperm out. Maybe a baby will come out of it, maybe not. Now replenish. So, you can tell people, there's the old joke about the male ejaculates and then he starts to snore, right? All of those jokes come from, so, that's for the male. Now, she doesn't feel like the male should limit themselves to a certain number of ejaculation based on age. You just need to feel where you are. But the woman in the context of sex is a completely different being than the man. The man ejaculates, and in many ways, that moment, the intensity of energy of sexuality dissipates. So if he's with a woman, it's almost like he loses some interest in her sexually for that moment. That's why people talk about how important it is to cuddle afterwards. But the woman is a basically super being here. The woman is the superhero. The woman can have an orgasm and it doesn't weaken her. It doesn't deplete her. She can have another one. It only strengthens her. So Kim said that a man is like fire, quick to light and quick to extinguish. And in fact, the challenge of the male in sexual intercourse is to last longer, to match up. She said, women are like water, slow to heat up, but can continue boiling and maintain for hours. So in fact, during usual sexual intercourse, it's the male's challenge to keep going before ejaculation long enough for the woman to boil and get to the point when she boils. So, women have more power in that respect that men do. But she said that many women, because of upbringing, notions, society, kind of push it all down. And that is kind of a shame. Because if the woman...
go ahead.
If the woman keeps her big energy like this, just simmering, she will be more vital in her daily life. She will have more power, but also even in sexual contact, she won't need to start from zero and boil. She's already simmering. So both men and women can learn how to manage their energies a little bit better.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, to sum it up, what you just said, Adiel, is that men always seem to have that desire, that sexual energy turned on. What they need to do is learn how to sort of drag it out so that it's not just a quick flash in the pan. And women, on the other hand, need to open up to their sexual energy and allow it to be this constant boil all the time. And then they can tap into it whenever they need to, and they don't have to slowly kind of ease into it. I thought that was a really insightful point that she brought up, and an interesting way to see how men and women are very yin and yang, complementary, but opposite in some ways.
Right. And again, I mean, I've taken a few courses in Tantra from Mantak Chia, from Thailand. I took a couple of courses with him and a couple of courses with Charles Muir. And when they talk about the male, and she talked about it too, she said, men can work with his breath to get the sexual energy not just concentrated down there, but to actually move it through the body. It gives you more vitality, but also it controls ejaculation. Normally, she says, when men is getting ready to ejaculate, they tighten their body voluntarily or involuntarily, usually involuntarily, and they breathe very shallow. So breathing deep. So breathing deeply seems to be so good in so many contexts anyway. Now it's good in the sexual context. Breathing deep will already help the man control and maintain and stay there. So that's quite interesting stuff. She says there's nothing wrong with ejaculation, of course, but just do it consciously.
That was her key thing. She said she's a proponent of conscious ejaculation. So you are really intentional about when, why, and you have the mastery to be able to make those choices, when and why I choose to do it. That is a conscious decision versus, I think, like you were saying in the interview, or she even mentioned, most men, they're done within 2 to 3 minutes, if they have no awareness and they practice no control, breath work, things like that, they're done in 2 to 3 minutes. And so, but men can learn to go 2-3 hours easy if they actually practice these sorts of things. And on the flip side, I loved how she said about women that, women have been conditioned to believe that they're not sexual beings. And she said all of that changed, she thinks, when the 50 Shades of Grey, books and the movies came out. All of a sudden, she said, it was like women were able to relate to themselves as sexual beings, no longer had to kind of repress it, hide it down. And then she said it really shifted things for women where they started to want to talk about sex and to talk about what they wanted and needed. So I think we're at a moment in our culture right now where, men need to create space for women to be the sexual beings that they are. And men need to also then start to practice these types of techniques so that they can be more empowered and more control and more conscious of their sexuality.
Well, as we said before, that women have the superpower when it comes to sexual. So many cultures, unfortunately, used to, and still in very small places in the world, they still do it, where the males want to control the women, and they even look at the women's sexual prowess. Prowess meaning she can boil, she can stay there, she can have multiple orgasms, as threatening.
Yeah.
So they do the unthinkable, they do the horrific act of female circumcision because they are terrified of the woman upstaging the man, or maybe wanting to have sex and maybe going out, and having sex with multiple partners. They actually mutilate them, not to enjoy sex, and to make them just a vessel for the male's sperm and be a vessel for the male's enjoyment, but they count for nothing.
Yeah.
That is absolutely horrific. Luckily, it's going away.
Yeah, I hope it goes away. And just to put a fine point on the point you're making, Adiel, if sexual energy wasn't the most profound and powerful energy in the world, these men would have nothing to be afraid of. The fact that they're so afraid only proves the point of how powerful sexual energy is, that they would be terrified of a woman's sexuality and therefore lead to mutilation.
By the way, in general, especially in the Western world in which we live, and we're part of that thinking, the man is supposed to be the one who does stuff. That's the yang, energy. The woman, supposedly yin, receives. Even the way we are built is the man penetrates, the woman accepts and receives. But there is a notion, because the male is the doer, supposedly. Even women like to say, kiss me, do this to me, do something to me. But there is the notion that exists in both men and women's head about male performance. So now, yes, the man is the doer, the man is the initiator, he wants to blah, blah, blah. But now he's also, under the gun. He needs to perform, he needs to satisfy. There's a lot of pressure. According to how Kim spoke, and many other tantric sources that you and I have read, all of that is not necessary. It's not about performance. It's not a race. It's not the Olympics. When you relax, right there, you've taken a huge step towards sexual enjoyment. I mean, many Tantra masters says, you can have very satisfying full sex, whether the man is even erect or not. It's all about, like we said, before, you hold hands.
Yeah.
That is already a bit of a sexual act. you caress, you talk, you this. There's so much to do. And yes, penetration is, of course, but it's not all about, as somebody said, it's not just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's about interacting with another person. It's a conversation, exchange of energy. Well, she talks about the G-spots. So yeah, I mean, I learned about those in the Tantra courses that I took. The female G-spot is actually very accessible and quite easy to find. Some women don't like to be touched there. They're not used to it. Some people just love it, respond to it. The male G-spot is in an awkward place. You need to actually go inside the man's behind and point, towards his belly button to reach the male G-spot. So many men will never explore it because what? I'm not gay. Come on, So I mean, there's so much more exploration that can be done.
Yeah, and I think Kim even mentioned that. She said, there's more psychological, cultural barriers than there are physical barriers that we need to overcome. And actually, even just the thing just to go back to the topic you brought up a few minutes ago, actually, in the tantric and the Taoist circles, this idea of the male having to be the doer and the one that has to be the performer, so to speak. It's actually the opposite in those belief systems. Actually, the woman is the one with all of the energy. The male is more passive, is more in a meditative state, is more, not that he's the receiver, but energetically he's more the receiver, and physically he is the doer, if that makes sense. So it creates this, again, yin yang tension, which is quite interesting. I'll end this comment with a talk that I heard years ago from that one tantric teacher, Osho. And he said, men will think that they have to get on top of a woman, this big, hairy, gorilla of a beast. And he said, no. He said, the man should be passive, should be quiet, should be still. And the woman is the one who initiates. And this was his way of sort of saying in the tantric circles, that's what they teach. But I just think it's pretty interesting that we have so much cultural baggage to break through. And I think your interview with Kim really helped to start to cut away at that. I hope our listeners really are feeling that.
Well, I mean, it just occurred to me when we talked, you see a lot of movies, at least, and I think it's something, the two people finished having sex, they're in bed, and guy says, was I good?
Yeah.
Was I good?
Yeah.
And he's thinking, oh, was I as good as her last boyfriend? Right. Well, that question doesn't need to be asked at all.
No.
Because if it was good, you felt good.
Exactly.
You can feel what's going on. You can feel what's going on. There's no need to pretend. As we know, there's also some women are put in a position that they are so much in the shadow of this question, was I good? Sometimes the male orgasm is more available. In fact, the challenge is to control it. Female orgasm can come, can go, can be there that day, cannot be there that day, depends on the mood. Women should never feel like they need to fake it. That's ridiculous.
Sure, of course.
So, that's one thought that I had. But another thought is, once again, about performance and days. Our teenagers are exposed to much more sexual content via porn that is everywhere, to get a distorted view of what sexual energy is, sex is, and even love. So they see, of course, when you create a porn movie, you bring even size, you bring, the actors with the biggest, equipment, and then the teenagers, oh, wait a second, I don't measure up. All of those things, plus the whole kind of stuff that they show. So in fact, you hear from young girls that when they do come to have a sexual encounter with the young boy behaves in a way that's really aggressive and not natural, because that's what he saw in the porn that he watches. So that's a little bit, I think that people are going to need more of Kim's teaching as the generations mature, because the young people who started watching porn on their phone pretty soon will be in their 20s and 30s. So there's a lot of stuff like that too, which is the opposite of what she's talking about.
Well, and I know we're going to have some other teachers in the area of sexual energy and sexual power on as well on this show. One thing that Kim said near the end of the interview, which I think kind of is a great accent to what you just brought up in a way, because, you know, you think about porn and where, and not that we're making anything wrong about anything. It's again, how you use it. Are you conscious? Are you intentional or whatever? But in the case of kids, absolutely, they are getting conditioned, culturally conditioned and psychologically conditioned for what they think sex is. And it is most of the time not accurately portrayed in porn in terms of what it can and should actually be. And what Kim said about, you know, sexual energy, she said, you know, when our sexual energy is low or non-existent and our intimate relationships suffer. And by the way, if you're thinking that porn is supposed to be a replication of the real life, your relationships are going to suffer, just as a matter of fact, as a result of that. And so she said, you know, all other areas of your life will suffer as well. And she says, on the other hand, if your sexual energy is alive and it's in balance and it's flowing, the rest of your life is going to also flow and be in balance and come alive. And so we want to start bringing a healthy dialogue through this show and guests that we have around sex. So it's not this thing that is always on the extremes or the fringes, or is, you know, something that you only access through porn, because then we get the society that we have. And we need to start bringing health and a sense of wellness and balance and integrity to the conversation. And I think you started that very well, Adiel, with this first interview. We've got
but it's powerful energy, and powerful, you know, energy can do things like she said. Sexual energy can make you be creative as an artist,
huge,
creative in your business, make more money. Sexual energy, I think, is, as we said before, charisma, enthusiasm. When you see an enthusiastic person, usually the type of energy is that kind of. So there's a lot to, you know, unlock, and a lot that we can use and have, which makes our life better. She also talks, like everybody else, very important to eat well.
Yeah.
She eats only organic food. Again, same thing with less sugar, less processed, movement. All of those things apply to our sexual lives, of course, as well.
Yeah. And I know we have some interviews that you're going to be doing coming up around things like heart disease and things like that. And even in those interviews, I wouldn't be surprised, because I've read it before, that, you know, erectile dysfunction and things like that are connected to the health of the circulatory system and the blood and all of that stuff. So, I mean, if our viewers have been listening for a while, they're starting to get the message, Adiel, that you're trying to bring to the world, which is that everything is connected. You know, you can't isolate one aspect of your wellness or your being and expect the rest to be in balance if you isolate it. So, and on that note, actually, just as we wrap up, we've got about 2 minutes here. You've got a fabulous interview coming up with Ari Whitten. And I know that this is one that you're really excited to do. Tell our viewers a little bit about Ari and why they should tune in for this next interview.
I am indeed very excited to do the interview with Ari Whitten. I came across him the first time when I read a book that he wrote about red light. So the book is about red light and infrared light as a healing modality. I read the book, made a lot of sense, and I had a lot of questions. So right there, I'm quite happy with him. But he is really the consummate researcher. He's everywhere. He's very thorough. So he goes into many fields of health and wellness. And I think we're going to get a lot of information out of him. It's going to be useful for us and for our viewers. I want to, ask him in detail about saunas. What kind of sauna? Far infrared, near infrared, natural, just with steam. I want to know steam or just, heating element. Want to learn so much. And I know this guy goes into the details. This guy is one of those people that has the patience to swallow the research and then disseminate it to us in an easy way. So certainly I'm excited.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, again, everything's connected. And I'm eager to learn about the impact that the red light therapy and different light spectrums can have on circulation, on the health of our skin, the impact of our psychology. So I'm really eager to hear your interview with him and see where it goes. Any final words before we break for this episode?
Well, Kim Anami was a lovely and wonderful and knowledgeable interview. I know Ari Witten, I think, is going to be very, very exciting. In general, we always strive to give you, our viewers, things you can do, hopefully not expensively, right now even, to better our health. And I'm very thankful that you viewed this, and I hope to see you in the future.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Don't forget to tune in with Ari Witten on the next podcast. Until then, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining me today. Click the subscribe button for more video. Got a question or comment? I love questions and comments. Leave yours below. And here's another video you've got to see.